Life as it unfolds is a dance, a fluid, rhythmic movement of moments. And yet how often do we forget to simply enjoy the dance, lost as we are in the web of our own expectations? We crave, we cling, we compare, constantly seeking validation from others, as if their opinion will grant us the permission to exist fully. But the truth is startlingly simple. You are already here. You are already enough. Think about it. The clouds don't seek approval to drift across the sky. The waves don't ask the shore if they're crashing beautifully. They simply are. And in their being, they embody the essence of freedom. We too were born with that freedom, yet we've traded it for the illusion of control. We've tethered ourselves to the thoughts, judgments, and whims of others, as if their gaze defines our worth. But why? Detachment doesn't mean indifference. It doesn't mean you stop loving or caring. It means you stop clinging. Imagine holding sand in your hand. Grasp it tightly and it slips through your fingers. Hold it loosely and it remains. This is the nature of life, relationships, and experiences. The tighter we cling, the more we lose. Enjoyment, true enjoyment, arises in the letting go. It's not found in the approval of others or the achievement of some distant goal. When you stop attaching yourself to others' opinions or outcomes, you free yourself to live authentically. And in that authenticity, life becomes light. You begin to realize that you are not a fixed entity, bound by others' definitions. You are like a river, flowing, changing, always becoming. So what happens when you stop taking life so seriously, when you stop trying to control every twist and turn? You begin to see its playfulness. You begin to laugh at your own attempts to figure it all out. Life isn't a puzzle to be solved. It's a melody to be danced to. And in that dance, there's no need for approval. The moment you free yourself from the grip of others' expectations, you begin to notice something astonishing. Life moves on its own, effortlessly, like a river finding its path. There's no need to push or pull. There's no need to measure yourself against someone else's flow, yet so often we act as though we must justify our existence through external validation, as though our worth depends on how someone else perceives us. But the reality is this: no one else can live your life for you, and no one else can feel the simple joy of being alive on your behalf. That is entirely yours. When you stop seeking approval, you stop fighting the current. You begin to float, carried by the natural rhythm of life. This doesn't mean that life becomes passive. It means you learn to trust its unfolding. Think about how much energy we waste trying to control what others think of us. We construct elaborate images, carefully curated, to present ourselves as successful, happy, or enlightened. But in doing so, we lose sight of who we are without those masks. What would happen if you simply let go of the need to be seen a certain way? What if you let go of the fear of being misunderstood? There is freedom in not being defined. When you stop clinging to identities imposed by others, or even by yourself, you become like the wind. You can shift, move, and evolve without needing anyone's permission. And in that freedom, you rediscover the simple pleasure of just being. Life is not something that needs to be figured out or perfected. It's not a problem to be solved, and it's certainly not a performance. It's a moment-to-moment experience. And the most profound experiences in life don't come from others applauding your success or admiring your choices. They come in the quiet moments when you are fully present, fully alive, and completely unattached to whether anyone notices or approves. Consider the beauty of a flower blooming in a hidden corner of the forest. It doesn't bloom for an audience. It doesn't ask, am I beautiful enough? Am I seen? It simply unfolds, and in that unfolding, it is perfect. We too are like that flower, but somewhere along the way, we began to believe that our value depends on how brightly we shine in someone else's eyes. The irony is that this attachment to approval, to validation, to recognition, diminishes our capacity to truly enjoy life. When your mind is preoccupied with how others perceive you, you miss the richness of the present moment. You miss the way the sunlight dances on water, the warmth of a loved one's hand, the taste of food shared with friends. These are the moments that make life full, and they exist entirely outside the realm of judgment or comparison. When you detach from others, you don't lose connection. You gain clarity. You begin to see people not as extensions of your identity, but as individuals with their own paths, their own stories. And in that clarity, relationships become lighter, freer, and more genuine. You no longer demand that others complete you or define you. Instead, you allow them to simply be, just as you allow yourself to simply be. There is an immense power in this detachment, not the power to control, but the power to release. When you release your grip on how life should be, you discover how life is. And often what you find is far more beautiful than anything you could have planned or expected. Letting go doesn't mean abandoning responsibility. It doesn't mean withdrawing from life. It means engaging with life fully, but without the weight of needing it to turn out a certain way. Imagine watching a movie, but instead of enjoying the story, you're constantly worrying about the ending. wouldn't that rob you of the experience? Life is much the same. When you detach from outcomes, you give yourself permission to enjoy the unfolding story. And that enjoyment is always available to you. It doesn't depend on others, it doesn't depend on achievements, it doesn't even depend on external circumstances. It arises from within in the simple act of paying attention. When you truly see what's in front of you, without labeling it, judging it, or comparing it, you step into the fullness of life. But this requires trust. Trust in yourself, trust in life, and trust in the unknown. We often resist letting go because we're afraid of what might happen if we stop striving, stop controlling, stop clinging. But what are we really afraid of? That life might be less if we stop holding on so tightly? Or that it might actually be more? The truth is, life is always more when you let it be. It's more vivid, more unpredictable, more alive. When you stop clinging to others, you make space for spontaneity. When you stop chasing approval, you make space for authenticity. And when you stop fearing the unknown, you make space for wonder. In that space, you find yourself. Not the self that others see or the self you've constructed to fit in, but the self that is simply here, breathing, feeling, being. That self doesn't need validation. It doesn't need to be admired or understood. It simply exists, like a bird soaring through the sky or a river flowing to the sea. And in that existence, there is joy. Not the fleeting joy of achievement or recognition, but the quiet, steady joy of being alive. It's the joy that comes when you stop searching for something outside of yourself and realize that everything you need is already here. This joy is not dependent on others. It's not something they can give you or take away. It's yours, and it always has been. When you detach from others, you don't lose connection. You gain freedom. Freedom to be yourself. Freedom to live without fear of judgment. Freedom to experience life as it is, not as you think it should be. And this freedom, this detachment, is not a rejection of the world, it's an embrace of it. When you stop clinging, you open your arms to life in all its forms. The joy, the sorrow, the beauty, the chaos. You stop trying to control the dance and simply join in. And in doing so, you discover that life is not something to be mastered or conquered. It's something to be lived. Every moment, every breath, every heartbeat is an invitation to let go and enjoy. Not because someone is watching, not because you're proving anything, but because you're here. And that in itself is enough. The beauty of life lies in its impermanence, its constant flow, its refusal to stay still. Yet we fight it, don't we? We cling to people, to situations, to ideas, desperately trying to freeze time as if capturing a moment will make it last forever. But what we don't realize is that clinging only creates tension, a struggle against the natural rhythm of life. It's like trying to hold on to water with a clenched fist. Tighten your grip. It slips away faster. The same is true for our relationships and our interactions with the world. We attach ourselves to people as though they are anchors, as though their presence, their approval, their love will ground us and keep us whole. But the truth is, no one can complete you. No one can give you the stability you seek. if you haven't found it within yourself. This isn't to say that relationships aren't beautiful, they are, but they become burdensome when you use them as a crutch, a way to avoid facing your own inner fears and insecurities. Detachment doesn't mean you stop loving or caring. It means you stop trying to possess. To love someone while remaining detached is to give them the freedom to be themselves, to change, to evolve, without your expectations weighing them down. It's about recognizing that people are not objects to be held on to, but rivers flowing in their own directions. And you too are a river, ever-changing, never stagnant. When you free yourself from the need to control or define others, you discover that love doesn't diminish, it expands. It becomes lighter, less conditional. You stop expecting others to meet your unspoken demands or fulfill roles you've assigned to them. And in that space, love becomes pure. It becomes a celebration of connection rather than a transaction of needs. But to reach this point, you must first look within. You must confront the parts of yourself that feel incomplete, the parts that crave external validation. Why is it that we so often look to others to tell us who we are? Is it fear? Fear that without their approval, we might not exist in the way we hope to? Or is it habit, a pattern learned over years of seeking acceptance from the outside world? Whatever the reason, the truth remains. The self you're searching for cannot be found in someone else. It's not in their praise, their attention, or their affection. It's in the quiet moments when you sit with yourself, when you let go of distractions and simply be. Those moments can be uncomfortable at first, even terrifying. But they are where you begin to see who you truly are, beyond the masks and roles you've adopted. To enjoy life fully, you must learn to sit with yourself, not as a project to be fixed or improved, but as a presence to be experienced. When you stop trying to change who you are, when you stop trying to fit into a mold created by others, you begin to taste the freedom of simply existing. And in that freedom you find joy, not the fleeting kind that comes from external successes, but the deep, abiding joy of being alive. When you detach from others, you don't isolate yourself, you liberate yourself, you free yourself from the constant noise of comparison, from the exhausting cycle of seeking and striving. You begin to see life not as a competition, but as a shared experience, where everyone is walking their own path, facing their own struggles and discovering their own. And in this shared experience, there's no need to prove anything. There's no need to be better, faster, or more successful. The tree doesn't compete with the flower. The sky doesn't envy the ocean. They simply exist, each playing its part in the grand tapestry of life. When you let go of comparison, you begin to appreciate your own unique place in that tapestry. You see that you are not separate from life. You are life. This realization changes everything. It softens the edges of your existence. You stop resisting what is, and you start flowing with it. You stop clinging to what was, and you embrace what is yet to come. Life becomes less about achieving and more about experiencing. It becomes less about holding on and more about letting go. But letting go is not always easy. It requires trust. A trust in life, in yourself, and in the unfolding of things. It requires a willingness to step into the unknown, to release the safety of what is familiar. This trust is not something you can force. It's something that grows naturally when you begin to see that life has always been carrying you, even when you thought you were lost. The more you trust, the lighter you become. You stop carrying the weight of others' expectations and you start moving through life with a sense of ease. You begin to see that happiness is not something you achieve, it's something you allow. It's not in the future, it's in this very moment, waiting for you to notice it. Happiness is in the laughter that spills out unexpectedly. It's in the quiet moments when you lose yourself in a book or a song. It's in the way the world looks after it rains, fresh and alive. These moments don't ask anything of you. They don't require you to be anyone other than who you are. When you detach from others, you begin to see these moments more clearly. You stop chasing and start noticing. You stop striving and start being. And in that being, you discover that life is not a series of tasks to be completed or goals to be reached. It's a dance, a song, a painting in progress. And you too are in progress. You are not a finished product. You are not meant to be. The beauty of life lies in its impermanence, its constant evolution. The moment you think you've figured it all out, life will surprise you. And that's the point, to be surprised, to be moved, to be alive. In this way, detachment is not about withdrawing from life. It's about fully engaging with it. It's about stepping into the flow without resistance, without fear. It's about trusting that life will take you where you need to go, even if you don't know the destination. And as you move through life with this sense of detachment, you begin to see that everything is interconnected. Your joy is not separate from the joy of others. Your freedom is not separate from theirs. When you let go of the need to control or cling, you create space for others to do the same. You become a source of light, not because you're trying to be, but because you've stopped trying altogether. In that lightness, you find peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from avoiding life's challenges, but the kind that comes from embracing them. You see that life is not perfect, but it is beautiful. And you, just as you are part of that beauty. When you let go of the constant need to control, to direct, to cling to how things should be, life begins to breathe. It unfolds naturally, like a flower opening to the sun, with no force, no hurry. In that space of surrender, you find a rhythm that was always there, waiting for you to notice. It's not the rhythm of striving or achieving, but of being, of simply allowing life to move through you without resistance. This doesn't mean life becomes devoid of challenges. On the contrary, challenges remain, but they no longer feel insurmountable or personal. You stop taking life so seriously, and in doing so, you discover that even in difficulty, there is a certain grace. You see that challenges are not walls, but waves. Temporary, always moving, always passing. When you stop fighting them, when you stop clinging to the idea of how things are supposed to be, you begin to flow with them. You learn to ride the waves rather than drown in them. So much of our suffering comes from clinging, from holding on to what was, to what could have been, or to what might never be. We replay the past in our minds, clinging to memories, to people, to moments that are gone. Or we project ourselves into the future, clinging to outcomes, to goals, to a vision of life that hasn't yet arrived. But in doing so, we miss the only thing that's real, this moment, here and now. This is where life is happening. Not in the past, not in the future, but right here, in the breath you're taking, in the sensations of your body, in the sounds around you. When you detach, you let go of the weight of past and future. You stop dragging them around with you like heavy luggage, and you begin to travel lightly. You start to see that the past is a story, a collection of moments that no longer exist except in your memory. And the future? It's a blank page, unwritten, unknowable. To live fully, you must be willing to put down the stories of the past and release the anxieties of the future. Only then can you experience the freedom of this moment. Freedom, however, is not something most people are comfortable with. There's a strange comfort in clinging, in attachment, in the certainty of control, even when it brings suffering. To detach is to step into the unknown, to trust in life's unpredictability, to let go of the illusion that you can control everything. And yet, it is only in this letting go that true freedom is found. When you no longer need life to fit your expectations, when you no longer need others to behave a certain way, you open yourself to the infinite possibilities of what life can be. This openness transforms the way you see the world. You stop labeling things as good or bad, as successes or failures. You start to see them simply as experiences, each one a part of the vast tapestry of your life. Even the things you once resisted, the moments you once wished away, take on a new light. You see them not as obstacles, but as teachers, as opportunities to grow, to learn, to expand your perspective. And as your perspective shifts, so does your relationship with others. You no longer see people as extensions of yourself or as mirrors of your worth. You stop needing them to validate you, to agree with you, or to love you in a certain way. Instead, you begin to appreciate them as they are, unique, ever-changing, on their own paths. You stop clinging to relationships, and in doing so, you make room for them to flourish. And in doing so, you make room for them to flourish. Love becomes lighter, freer, unburdened by expectation or control. This kind of love is rare because it requires you to let go of your ego. The ego thrives on attachment. It wants to possess, to control, to define. But when you detach, you step beyond the ego. You begin to see that love is not about possession, but about presence. It's not about holding on, but about being with. To love someone is not to cling to them, but to celebrate their freedom, their individuality, their journey. The same is true for the way you love yourself. Detachment is not just about your relationship with others. It's about your relationship with yourself. When you detach from the stories you've told yourself about who you are, stories of failure, of inadequacy, of not being enough, you begin to see yourself clearly. You are not your past, you are not your achievements, you are not the labels others have placed on you. You are something far deeper, far more expansive. You are life itself, flowing, changing, limitless. To live with this awareness is to live lightly. You stop burdening yourself with expectations, with the need to be perfect, with the fear of making mistakes. You begin to play again, to experiment, to approach life with a sense of curiosity rather than judgment. Every moment becomes an opportunity not to prove yourself, but to explore, to create, to experience. This playfulness is your natural state. Watch a child and you'll see it. They don't worry about whether they're doing life right. They don't cling to outcomes or obsess over what others think. They simply live, fully immersed in the joy of the present moment. This is the essence of detachment. Not withdrawing from life, but engaging with it completely, without fear, without judgment, without clinging. When you live this way, life becomes less of a struggle and more of a dance. You stop trying to control the music, and you start moving to its rhythm. You stop fearing the unknown, and you start embracing it as part of the adventure. You stop clinging to the people and things you love, and you start appreciating them as they are, here and now. The truth is, nothing in life is permanent. The people you love will change, the moments you cherish will pass, and the things you cling to will eventually fade. This is not a tragedy, it's a gift. Impermanence is what makes life precious. If everything lasted forever, there would be no urgency to live, no reason to savor each moment. It is the fleeting nature of life that gives it its beauty. To detach is not to reject this impermanence, but to embrace it. It is to see the beauty in the ever-changing nature of existence, to find joy not in holding on, but in letting go. It is to live with open hands, open heart, open mind, trusting that whatever life brings, it will be enough. And in that trust you find peace. Not the peace that comes from avoiding life's challenges, but the peace that comes from knowing you can face them. Not the peace of certainty, but the peace of openness. Not the peace of perfection. When you stop clinging, you realize that life is not something you need to control or conquer. It is something to be experienced moment by moment, breath by breath. It is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. And in that living, in that letting go, you discover the simple, profound truth. Life itself is enough. You are enough. And so the message is this: life is not something to be grasped, controlled, or conquered. It is something to be lived fully and freely. When you let go of clinging to people, outcomes, and expectations, you open yourself to the vastness of what life has to offer. Detachment is not about indifference. It is about freedom. It is about loving without possession, experiencing without fear, and living without resistance. It is about loving without possession, experiencing without fear, and living without resistance. Understand that everything in life, every person, every moment, every experience, is temporary, and that's where its beauty lies. To detach is to embrace the flow, to trust in the impermanence, and to find peace in the ever-changing rhythm of existence. When you let go of the need to hold on, you discover that you are never lacking, never incomplete. You are life itself, whole, radiant, and enough just as you are. So, live fully, love deeply, and let go freely. For in the letting go, you will find the joy, the lightness, and the infinite possibilities that life has been offering you all along.